Hello everybody, I'm Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and it's time to give my final thoughts on patch 7.1 of Final Fantasy XIV. I'm sure there's a lot of clickbaity-esque titles or opening segues that I could give. I just don't feel as if any of them apply though. Because, for better or for worse, I think 7.1 lands on your expectations. If you are already loving the game, chances are 7.1 gave you more of what you liked, but if you were nonplussed about the game, or you just couldn't find the motivation to play, I can't really see 7.1 moving the needle for you that much right now. But that was also kind of what was expected. 7.1 was what quite a few people coined as the Raider patch. We will get the ultimate in a few weeks, and if you do ultimates, then you'll have content. If you don't, well, it'll be an interesting Twitch stream you can watch, I guess. But for me, the content I particularly cared about when it came to 7.1 were four things. Not in any particular order. The new dailies, so I can start passively leveling up my alts. The Alliance raid, based on Final Fantasy XI, Joanna the First Walk. The new main story quest, and then in a few weeks for me, I'll get more Hildebrand, but it's not like that's gonna be a large chunk of content or anything like that. And I will say, I think I am more pleasantly surprised about 7.1 than I thought I was going to be. I was optimistic for the long-term future of Final Fantasy XIV's story, but I wasn't expecting anything brilliant when it came to 7.1's MSQ, and I walked away from it rather optimistic and receptive to a lot of what they did. It wasn't perfect, and it still has some chunks to it that I don't care for, but on the whole, I'm looking forward to 7.2 and the near future of this story, and that was more than I could say before 7.1. So, in regards to that, I could say 7.1 is a massive success. It has me more interested and invested in the narrative of what's going on right now for Final Fantasy XIV, not just looking ahead to what could be an 8.0. So in that regard, thumbs up. When it comes to the Alliance raid, I never played Final Fantasy XI, so I wasn't expecting that much. I was expecting about a similar level of engagement from me as with Ivalice, where when I had played Ivalice back in the day, I had not played Final Fantasy XII, and I had not played Final Fantasy Tactics. I just didn't have much emotional investment to those crossover raids, but I really enjoyed them mechanically, and that can also apply here. Now, maybe my group, when I did the Alliance raid, was just really good. We didn't wipe whatsoever. Don't check the VOD how many times I wiped or died personally to the first boss, but I think it's a visual spectacle. I know the music comes from Final Fantasy XI, none of it really grabbed me personally. I loved the visuals and the environments. I thought a lot of the designs were cool, and I liked the story more than I thought I was going to, and it's kind of the opposite when it comes to it mechanically, because I viewed it to be kind of simple. Like, there's some really interesting things, especially with Shadow Lord in my opinion, but most of the other bosses didn't do much for me mechanically, but I wouldn't call them bad either. It's solidly okay for me, but I am rather invested in what's going to happen in the future when it comes to the story of the Alliance raid. I wasn't expecting to actually like it as much as I did, and I think that's in no small part because of how much there is. Like, it's a good chunk of time. The raid takes place rather early on, but the story just keeps going and going and going. And is it the best story they've ever made for an Alliance raid? No, not at all. But as someone who thought it would just be a bunch of fan service to Final Fantasy XI, well, it kind of is, but they're also tying it into characters we already know and are established to some degree, and yeah, I can vibe with it. I can't express to you how I do not care about the new dailies with the Pelu Pelu. For me, that's just XP, I'll get the rewards, but I'm not particularly invested in what happens at all. And yeah, like, for me, that's kind of 7.1. It's like the quintessential Final Fantasy XIV patch. And while I did enjoy playing through it, I wouldn't say anything that I played through was particularly overly negative or anything like that. There's just not much in terms of, okay, will this satiate me for 4 months? No. Like, it just won't. And we've talked about this before, but I think it's as good a time as any to bring up this issue that I have with patch cadence for Final Fantasy XIV, and that is this really awkward period at the beginning of each expansion before we get a lot of the endgame. Because Dawntrail was advertised, and it's not like they ever said this was all going to come out in 7.0 or anything, like we were expecting a later release for a lot of these pieces of content, but I don't think that necessarily makes it better, or makes the wait more tolerable. It's like we're going going to get a new Criterion dungeon. We're going to get a new Deep dungeon. We're going to get a new, like, Bozja-esque style piece of content. We're going to get cosmic exploration. It's 7.1 and we don't have any of that. So it's like you have this, like, assuming we get a lot of that in 7.2, and I just don't see us getting all of it in 7.2. We're waiting like 8+ months from the beginning of Dawntrail for a lot of that mid-core content to be introduced into Dawntrail. And if you raid, you're golden. You have a lot of content. But if you don't, like me, you dip in, experience the story, experience the new raids, maybe grind a couple of weeks if you really want to, and then, you know, Bob's your uncle. You do it. You're good. And that is one of the advertised elements of Final Fantasy XIV. They've talked about this before, how it is a game you can drop in and drop out of, and that plays to a strength that Final Fantasy XIV rightfully has. That you can come in, get from the game what you want out of it, play as much as you want, and then when you say, you know what, I'm good, you can dip and not feel as if you're going to be falling perpetually behind everyone else. That is a genuine strength to the game. And I don't think that's an identity that Final Fantasy XIV needs to shun or move away from, but I also think this isn't a binary option, it can be viewed as a spectrum. And I think, quite simply put, the game needs more content. Actually, I think it would be more accurate to say that the new content that the game is going to get for each expansion needs to come out sooner. Because nothing can, like, kill the hype of a new expansion for an MMO like the feeling of not having anything to do. You can have a lot to do. Like, I have a bunch of old relics that can go grind. I could go level up my gatherers and crafters and all that. There's a lot of things in this game that I can go and choose to do. I could pug the extremes and get my wing mounts if I really want to. Like I said, there's a lot you can do, but I tend to find when it comes to MMO design, much like a lot of other game design, a lot of it can be psychological, and the feeling of not having anything to do can be more important than the actual reality of you have a lot of things to do. It's just, what's your motivation to do these things? For instance, when Bozja was still relevant, I had a lot of things that I wanted to do in the game, and because of that, I was more incentivized to do these things that were available to me, and are still available to me right now, but without the entire support structure, I just lose motivation. And I don't think I'm the only one to feel this way, but at the end of the day, it is a subjective opinion. People are going to have different wants, different preferences, and especially the case for an MMORPG, people are going to want different things out of that MMORPG. I imagine there's a giant swath of people that are perfectly satisfied with the current state of the game, and I also imagine there's a giant swath of people out there that just want more. Like, it's an MMORPG at the end of the day. I want a reason to log in every day. I want a reason to feel as if I want to play. And I think the biggest sin with Dawntrail right now is that I just don't have that feeling. I think I eventually will when we get to 7.2, when we get to 7.3, when we start to get these, like, end game systems like cosmic exploration, like the new Bozja. And if they stick the landing with these pieces of content, then everything will start to fall into place for me. But again, is it healthy in the long term to have this, like, awkward 8-month window at the beginning of an expansion when a hype is hottest? Or at least should be hottest, for the feeling be, well, I should probably just play later on down the line. And that's what I'm meaning by 7.1, I don't think is going to move the needle for anyone. I think what it did do well. I really enjoyed the Alliance raid. I really enjoyed the story for the Alliance raid when I thought I wasn't going to. It's not my favorite Alliance raid they've ever made, far away, but I quite enjoyed it. We have a bunch of quests, but those tend to be just one-off things to do instead of perpetual grinds or just perpetual reasons and motivations to keep playing the game. That does have a sub fee, by the way. It's always important just to have as a disclaimer here. So yeah, if you are already loving Final Fantasy XIV, I think you will continue to love it in Final Fantasy XIV 7.1. If you are losing motivation and you are losing the will to play the game, I don't really see 7.1 rekindling anything in that regard. I think you're better off coming back, checking in with 7.2 or whenever they add these other pieces of endgame content. For better or for worse, Final Fantasy XIV is formulaic with its content cadence. And while we were expecting this for 7.1, when I say it like that, yeah, 7.1 is what you expect it to be. And whether or not that's a good or a bad thing for you depends upon what you personally want to get out of Final Fantasy XIV. Personally, I want more motivation, reason to play Final Fantasy XIV, and 7.1 did not give it to me for a long term. I wasn't expecting it to do that, but that doesn't make it any better for me. I enjoyed what I played, I enjoyed what was there, but it feels very similar to an Endwalker patch in that regard, where I'm just playing a couple of days on patch launch, and then I just drift away. I'll be back in 4 months, and I don't want to feel like that when it comes to Final Fantasy XIV, but that's just simply how I feel about it. I guess with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below with how you have been enjoying 7.1. Is it what you wanted? Do you want more out of this game? What do you want to see for the future of Final Fantasy XIV, content-wise? Do you want to see more of the same, or do you want to see them shake things up a bit? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!